You're sitting across from someone you trust, and they just said something that made your stomach drop, but you can't explain why. The words sounded kind, concerned even, but somewhere deep in your gut, alarm bells are screaming. You brush it off. You tell yourself you're overthinking. But 3 months later, you realize you've stopped seeing your friends, stopped trusting your own judgment, and you can't remember when it started. That phrase you heard, it wasn't concern. It was phrase number 7 on a list of psychological weapons used by covert narcissists. People who've mastered the art of control without ever raising their voice. And here's what makes this dangerous. These phrases don't sound abusive. They sound like love, like care, like someone looking out for you. That's exactly what makes them so effective. By the end of this video, you'll recognize all 7 phrases, and more importantly, you'll understand the psychological machinery beneath each one, so no one can use these weapons on you again. Before we begin, you need to understand what we're actually dealing with. A covert narcissist isn't the loud, obvious egomaniac you see in movies. They're not throwing tantrums or demanding worship. Instead, they've perfected something far more insidious. They've learned to feed their need for control by playing the victim, the helper, the sensitive soul who just wants what's best for you. Clinical psychologists describe covert narcissism as vulnerable narcissism, a presentation where grandiosity hides behind a mask of insecurity. These individuals lack genuine empathy, but they're exceptional at performing it. They study you like a manuscript, learning exactly which emotional buttons to press. And their primary tool? Language. Specifically, phrases so carefully crafted that they bypass your logical defenses and strike directly at your sense of reality. Dr. Ramani Durvasula, a clinical psychologist specializing in narcissistic abuse, describes these verbal patterns as linguistic traps, statements designed to confuse, destabilize, and ultimately control. They work because they exploit something fundamental: your desire to be understood, to be reasonable, to give people the benefit of the doubt. So let's pull back the curtain on phrase number 7, and I'm warning you, you might recognize it immediately. Imagine this. You've just told your partner about a promotion opportunity that would require you to travel twice a month. Their face shifts, not angry, but pained. They reach across the table, hand covering yours, eyes soft with what looks like genuine concern. "I'm just worried about you," they say, voice barely above a whisper. "That's a lot of stress. You've been so tired lately. Are you sure you can handle it?" Notice what just happened. In 10 seconds, they've planted 3 seeds. That you're fragile, that your judgment is questionable, and that pursuing your goal is somehow dangerous. And they did it while appearing to care. This is concern trolling, using worry as a Trojan horse for control. The psychology here is devastatingly simple. Humans are wired to respond to displays of care, especially from people we're attached to. When someone expresses worry, we instinctively want to ease their distress, often by abandoning whatever triggered their concern. But here's the tell. Genuine concern asks questions and respects your agency. How are you feeling about it? What support would help? Manipulative concern makes declarations about your limitations and positions the speaker as the protective authority. It's not a conversation, it's a verdict delivered with a sympathetic face. Over time, these worried statements accumulate. You start second-guessing opportunities. You internalize their assessment of you as someone who needs protection from your own choices. And the narcissist? They've secured control without ever saying, "You can't do that." But that's just the opening move. Phrase number 6 takes it further. It doesn't just question your choices, It attacks your right to have feelings about those choices at all. You've just explained, calmly, that something they said hurt your feelings. You chose your words carefully. You weren't accusing, just expressing. And then they sigh. That particular sigh that makes you feel like you're already exhausting them before they even respond. "You're too sensitive," they say, shaking their head slightly, as if disappointed by a character flaw they've tried so hard to overlook. In 3 words, they've accomplished something remarkable. They've made your emotional response the problem, rather than their hurtful behavior. This is invalidation weaponized into a phrase. Psychologist Dr. Craig Malkin explains that emotional invalidation serves a specific function in narcissistic relationships. It destabilizes the victim's internal compass. When your feelings are consistently labeled as too much, too sensitive, or overreacting, you begin to distrust your own emotional responses. You stop knowing when something is genuinely wrong because you've been trained to view your own perceptions as unreliable. This is gaslighting's foundation. Not the dramatic, movie version denial of reality, but the slow erosion of your confidence in your ability to interpret reality correctly. You start asking yourself, am I too sensitive? Is this normal? Am I the problem here? And here's the cruelest part. This phrase often comes after they've deliberately provoked you. They'll say something cutting, then when you react with understandable hurt, they'll pull out, "You're too sensitive," like it's proof of your instability rather than evidence of their calculated cruelty. The more you hear it, the quieter you become. Not because you've stopped feeling hurt, but because you've learned that expressing hurt only results in being pathologized. Which brings us perfectly to phrase number 5. Because once they've taught you to doubt your feelings, they can start cashing in on old debts you never knew you owed. Picture a ledger you never agreed to keep, but someone else has been maintaining for years. Every favor, every gift, every moment they showed up is recorded with meticulous detail. Not because they're generous, but because they're investors waiting for a return. And when you finally set a boundary or refuse a request, they open that ledger and read it back to you, line by line. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me." This is transactional love disguised as unconditional support, and it's psychologically brilliant because it exploits reciprocity, one of the most powerful social norms in human psychology. We're hardwired to feel indebted when someone helps us. Narcissists weaponize that instinct. Dr. Eleanor Greenberg, a psychologist specializing in personality disorders, describes this as the narcissistic favor bank. Unlike healthy relationships where support flows bidirectionally without scorekeeping, narcissists keep exact tallies. Their generosity always has invisible strings attached, and they'll yank those strings the moment you assert independence. Notice the phrase's construction. "After everything" creates an undefined, massive debt. "I've done for you" centers them as the perpetual giver and you as the perpetual taker. "This is how you repay me" frames your boundary as betrayal. In one sentence, they've rewritten the entire history of your relationship as their sacrifice and your ingratitude. The emotional impact is crushing. You feel guilty for needs you're entitled to have. You feel selfish for boundaries that are actually healthy. And most insidiously, you feel like you can never do enough to balance the scales, which is exactly the point. The debt is designed to be unpayable, ensuring permanent leverage. And we're only at number 5. Because now that they've made you doubt your feelings, question your perceptions, and feel perpetually indebted, they can start rewriting reality itself, which is where the next phrases live. The first 3 phrases were psychological conditioning, training you to distrust yourself. They questioned your judgment. They invalidated your emotions. They made you feel like you owe them your compliance. These are the setup moves, the foundation. But the next 4 phrases? These are reality manipulation. We're moving from subtle control into the territory clinical psychologists call crazy-making. Systematic distortion of truth designed to make you question whether you can trust your own mind. This is where covert narcissism reveals its most dangerous capability. Not just controlling how you feel, but controlling what you believe is real. Take a breath. Because phrase number 4 is where many people first realize something is deeply, fundamentally wrong. You saw what you saw. You know what happened. But now you're being told it didn't happen. At least, not the way you remember. You caught them in a lie. Maybe you saw the text message before they deleted it. Maybe you overheard a conversation they thought was private. The evidence is clear. You bring it up, heart pounding, expecting explanation or apology. Instead, they look at you with something between pity and amusement. You're imagining things. Not, I can explain. Not, let's talk about this. Just a flat dismissal of your perception of reality. This is direct gaslighting, a term that comes from the 1944 film Gaslight, where a husband systematically manipulates his wife into questioning her sanity. In clinical terms, it's a form of psychological abuse where the perpetrator denies the victim's experience of reality, causing them to doubt their own memory, perception, and ultimately, their sanity. Neuroscientist Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett's research on memory shows why this is so effective. Human memory isn't a recording device. It's reconstructive. We piece together memories from fragments, and that process is vulnerable to suggestion, especially from people we trust. When someone confidently denies something you remember, particularly someone emotionally close to you, it triggers genuine uncertainty. Your brain thinks, could I be wrong? They seem so sure. The narcissist knows this. They know that repeated denial, delivered with absolute conviction, will make you start questioning memories you were certain about 5 minutes ago. You'll find yourself saying things like, maybe I'm confused, or I guess I could have misunderstood, about events you witnessed clearly. And here's what makes it truly sinister. They're not trying to convince you they're right. They're trying to convince you that you can't trust yourself. Which is why phrase number 3 is even more chilling. Because it's not just denying your reality, it's erasing their own documented history. "24 hours ago, they made a promise. You both know it. They said the words. You remember the conversation, the location, what you were both wearing. Now you're following up on that promise, and they're staring at you like you've conjured a false memory from thin air. I never said that, they state, not defensively, but with the calm certainty of someone correcting an obvious error. You must have misunderstood me. This phrase is categorical denial weaponized, while you're imagining things questions your interpretation. I never said that denies the event occurred at all. It's gaslighting upgraded, not just challenging your perception, but erasing verifiable facts. Psychologist Dr. George Simon, who specializes in manipulative personalities, calls this responsibility-avoiding lying. It's not lying to gain something, it's lying to escape accountability. By denying they ever made the commitment, they're not just breaking a promise, they're making you the crazy person for believing a promise existed. The psychological impact compounds over time. After a dozen of these denials, you stop trusting your memory entirely. You start keeping notes, recording conversations, compiling evidence just to prove to yourself you're not losing your mind. Some victims develop hypervigilance, obsessively reviewing conversations in their heads, trying to be absolutely certain of what was said so they can defend their version of reality next time. And the isolation this creates is profound. Because without witnesses, it's your word against theirs. And they've spent months or years establishing to others that you're forgetful, confused, or emotional. So when you finally tell someone, "They promised me X and now they're denying it," the response is often, "Maybe you misunderstood," rather than, "That's concerning." The narcissist hasn't just rewritten history, they've made it impossible for you to get anyone else to believe the original version. But we're not at the worst phrase yet. Because phrase number 2 isn't about denying what they did, it's about making what they did your fault. They've just done something inexcusable, screamed at you in public, insulted you in front of friends, invaded your privacy. Maybe worse. You're still shaking from it, and somehow, impossibly, you find yourself apologizing. Because they've looked at you with wounded eyes and said the 6 words that turn perpetrator into victim. You made me do this. This is responsibility transfer at its most insidious. With one phrase, they've performed a psychological sleight of hand. Their abusive action becomes your fault. You provoked them. You pushed them too far. You left them no choice. They're not the aggressor. They're the victim of your behavior, forced into a regrettable response by your unreasonableness. Dr. Lundy Bancroft, who spent decades working with abusive individuals, identifies this as the core of the abuser's mindset. The fundamental belief that their partner's behavior causes their abusive response, rather than their own choice causing it. It's not just an excuse, they genuinely believe it. And more importantly, they need you to believe it too. The psychology here exploits your natural tendency to examine your own behavior when relationships go wrong. What did I do? How did I contribute to this? These are healthy questions in most contexts, but in the hands of a narcissist, your self-reflection becomes a weapon they wield against you. You start walking on eggshells, managing their emotions, micromanaging your own behavior to avoid making them react badly. You become responsible not just for your actions, but for their reactions to your actions. The mental load is crushing. You're now in charge of 2 people's emotional regulation. And here's the trap's final spring. When you inevitably fail to perfectly manage their emotions and they lash out again, they'll say, "See? You made me do this again. Why do you keep making me hurt you?" You're now apologizing for your own abuse. Which brings us to the phrase that makes all of this possible. The master manipulation that creates the environment where every other phrase can flourish. The number 1 phrase isn't the loudest. It's not the cruelest. It's the one that sounds like intimacy. They say it during a vulnerable moment, maybe when you're questioning the relationship or getting close to someone new. They take your hand, look into your eyes with that intensity that once made you feel special and say, "I'm the only one who really understands you." Or its close cousin, "No one else will ever love you like I do." It sounds romantic. It sounds like connection. It's actually a cage. This is isolating, masquerading as special bond, and it's the foundational manipulation that enables every phrase before it. Because once you believe they're uniquely capable of understanding or loving you, you can't trust outside perspectives that contradict them. Friends who say, "This doesn't seem healthy." They don't understand your special connection. Family members who express concern. They've never experienced love like yours. Dr. Christine Louis de Canonville, who specializes in narcissistic abuse recovery, describes this as psychological enmeshment. The blurring of boundaries where the victim comes to see the narcissist as the sole reliable interpreter of reality. It's not just that you love them, it's that you've come to believe they're the only person who can truly see you, which means losing them feels like losing the only witness to your existence. The neuroscience here is fascinating and disturbing. Isolation triggers the same brain regions as physical pain. When a narcissist convinces you that they're your only real connection, threatening that connection through withdrawal, silent treatment, or suggestions they might leave, causes genuine neurological distress. You'll do almost anything to avoid that pain, including accepting the other 6 phrases without question. This is why "I'm the only one who really understands you" is the master key. It doesn't just control your behavior, it controls your entire social reality. You've been convinced that this person is singular, irreplaceable, the only one who can decode you. Which means every other phrase, the concern trolling, the invalidation, the gaslighting, the blame shifting, goes unchallenged. Because who else could possibly understand what's really happening? The tragic irony? The reason you feel like they understand you so well is often because they've spent months or years mirroring you, studying your vulnerabilities, and then exploiting that knowledge. It's not understanding, it's reconnaissance. But here's what matters. You've now seen all 7 weapons, and awareness changes everything. Knowledge is powerful, but application is protection. So here's what you do with what you now know. First, trust your gut over their words. That sick feeling in your stomach when they say, "I'm just worried about you," or "You're too sensitive." That's not anxiety. That's your nervous system detecting manipulation before your conscious mind catches up. Neuroscientist Dr. Stephen Porges's research on the neuroception shows we have subconscious threat detection systems that often know something is wrong before we can articulate why. Your instincts aren't the problem. Ignoring your instincts is. Second, document reality. If you find yourself constantly questioning whether something happened or what was said, start keeping a private record. Not to prove anything to them, they'll never accept proof, but to prove to yourself that you're not losing your mind. Write down conversations, take screenshots, keep a journal. When they say, "I never said that," you'll have evidence that grounds you in reality. Third, seek outside perspectives from people who have no investment in maintaining the relationship. Not mutual friends who might prioritize peace over truth. Find a therapist, a support group, or trusted individuals who are emotionally distant enough to see patterns you can't. Dr. Ramani Durvasula emphasizes that narcissistic abuse creates cognitive distortions that are nearly impossible to identify from inside the relationship. You need external mirrors. And remember this, recognizing manipulation doesn't mean you were weak. Covert narcissists are psychological specialists who've spent their lives perfecting these techniques. They targeted your strengths, your empathy, your willingness to self-reflect, your capacity for forgiveness, and weaponized them. The fact that their tactics worked isn't evidence of your stupidity. It's evidence of their expertise in exploitation. Recovery isn't about blame. It's about clarity. And now you have it. So what happens next? That depends on what you do with these 7 phrases now that you can see them clearly. Look, I know some of you are sitting there right now, mentally cataloging every conversation you've had with someone specific. Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's that friend who leaves you feeling crazy every time you talk. And you're realizing these aren't isolated phrases. They're a system, a pattern. a map of how you've been controlled. Drop a comment below and tell me which phrase hit hardest. Not for judgment, for solidarity. Because one of narcissism's most effective tools is making you feel like you're the only one experiencing this. You're not. There are thousands of people watching this right now, having the exact same recognition you are. And if you found this valuable, here's what I need you to understand. This is part 1. We've identified the weapons, but the next video is about response, how to shut down these phrases without losing yourself in the process, how to maintain boundaries with someone who's been trained to demolish them, and when the right answer is to walk away entirely. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. This is psychological self-defense, and we're just getting started. Because now that you can see the manipulation, you can't unsee it, and that changes everything.